Welcome to the next level. I'm JVL here with my best friends, Sarah Longwell and Timothy Miller of the Bulwark. This is the first time out from behind the paywall. The podcast is now being made for you, the people. We're
mass
gonna
communicating.
ask you to something like that. So listen, two things. First of all, mash the subscribe button and also go over to thebulwark.com and sign up for all the great stuff. We do stuff over there every day. We have stories and podcasts and videos and it's almost all free. So you should go over and join us at thebulwark.com. Sarah, Tim, how are you guys today?
Do you want to do any preamble about the fact that this is a podcast that we have done behind the paywall now for a year at least, right?
It feels like longer. I don't know how long it's actually.
I think it's been 7 years, actually, Sarah.
Boy.
Okay. And so it is liberated from the paywall for the first time. Did you guys see the new cover art? It's our faces.
Oh God. No, it's already out there. It's our faces.
They have me doing blue steel.
It was like when they did the "Not My Party" logo without asking me for approval, and I was like, "The devil." I have devil ears that's going up. I really didn't like it.
Don't be a prima donna.
I'm a prima. I can be a little bit of a prima donna. Can I not?
My staff has so much respect for me. I was like, absolutely not. I just went ahead.
These fuckers.
Absolutely not that picture of my face.
You know what? This is a chance for you to, Sarah, lead by example, and by showing that you don't care about such trivialities, to then make it so that everybody else in the organization also feels like they can't care about trivialities.
That's true. I mean, what I didn't really put up a fight. I was just like, all right, whatever.
Yep. Exactly.
All
right. So
the magic has been happening. I think the important thing to understand for the new listeners is that I like to interrupt, and that this magic that you're hearing right now has been happening now for many, many years, and the people have been demanding it. The people have been demanding that we bring this public. Mostly the people on Sarah's paid staff have been demanding that we bring this public. They're of the opinion that this is now going to be, I don't know, up there with maybe Michael Barbaro in the Daily, or who knows right now, the heights that we could reach. So please share it with, your most bulwarky friend.
Whatever level it is, it's the next one.
Ooh.
All right, let's go here. We're taping on Tuesday afternoon. We were supposed to have the final January 6th committee hearing on Wednesday. That is now going to be postponed because there is a hurricane which is heading directly towards Florida. It's amazing. All of these models do not show a little bulbous thing where it could possibly veer off into Alabama or something. They just show a normal track. It's wonderful to live in a world where that happens. So I don't want to spend too much time on the January 6th thing, but Tim, there is some new footage of Roger Stone out from the documentary. Will you take this away so we can talk about it for 2 minutes?
Yeah. Are we listening to it? Should we listen to Raj? It's quite good. I mean, it's quite. You won't be surprised.
All you have to do is ask. You simply ask it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you'll see.
And the producers will make it appear.
We'll get to it. You will not be surprised. There's a little preview for this to hear Roger, and this is not deep, eloquent thinking about the values of nationalist populism. Okay, you're not getting the Claremont Review here. It's a little rough talk. So let's just go ahead and check it out.
Excellent. the violence. The voting. Let's get right to the violence.
Let's get right to it.
Shoot to kill. See an Antifa? Shoot to kill. Hey, them. Done with this bullshit.
Shoot to kill. No, I don't. That doesn't sound like just people who have legitimate concerns about our election security to me. Especially given that audio was from before the election. Actually, this audio is from before the election. So they hadn't even come up with the reason why the Hugo Chavez had broken into our election machines yet.
His ghost. It wasn't actually.
Yeah, my
Hugo
top
Chavez.
thoughts on this is just the hubris of these fucking guys. Like, this is now the second documentary film crew that we had following these people around. The Alex Holder film crew that was following around the Trumps that the January 6th committee got. Now we have this is a Danish film guy. Imagine being Roger Stone and feeling so above the law, knowing that Donald Trump will pardon you, that you can just kind of pal around with Proud Boys and Oath Keepers and just, chat about shooting to kill, chat about undermining the election, uh, uh, the plans to violently overthrow our democracy, and be like, we can let the Danes get this baby on tape.
So there's also a second piece of audio with him with another group of Proud Boys in which Roger Stone is saying that it was important that Trump just come out and declare that he's won because, the votes might not show that, but possession is 9/10 of the law, and make them try to take it from him. And, Sarah, what do you think about all this? This is great for democracy. It's totally cool, right?
So this isn't the only time where somebody has said, like, what Trump should do is just come out and declare victory.
Bannon.
Somebody else said
Bannon.
it, like Bannon, right? So, like, in the bowels of Trump's, what are actually his quite close advisors, Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, the people who've surrounded him, there was this sort of premeditated theory that even if he loses, he's going to come out and declare victory. What's interesting about the Roger Stone piece is the violence part, where they seemed ready, right, to have the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers show up and cause violence and mayhem. And so it doesn't surprise me that the January 6th committee would want to highlight the fact that there was this, group of people. And when you think about too, sort of the aftermath of it all, it's so brazen. These guys are out there on film talking about their premeditated violence, their premeditated desire to say that that Trump should just declare victory, no matter what. And yet they still had the audacity when it all went down to be like, that was Antifa. Let's look at those Black Lives Matter guys. It's attacking the Capitol under false flags to make us Republicans look bad. And this really is where the bifurcated media gives such an advantage to all of these like lunatics, because it's like hard to actually piece it all together, or like you piece it all together a year later. And I wonder what, like, we hear this and it should be smoking gun kind of territory, right? Like, these guys were planning the violence, they were planning to declare victory. It all happened just like they were planning it to happen. And yet we're all like, yeah, Roger Stone's a lunatic. That tracks.
Well, it's this shows to me, this is like following an EPA investigation on a toxic leak in a river, right? So you start with this.
Who's the river?
The river is the Republican Party. So you have this stuff at the source. We have Roger Stone asking for violence and saying we're just going to declare it. And then it moves downriver into the Kerry Lake parts of the world where everybody just takes as given that, of course, the election was stolen. We need to jail the people who were counting the votes because they, locked them up because the Secretary of State should never have certified this stolen election. And then you get Glenn Youngkin running out to Arizona, Mr. Good Republican, Mr. Youngkin model, Mr. The Future, Mr. You got to like Trump a little bit if you're going to eventually not like Trump at all. And you have him out there, and it is like 3 degrees of Steve Bannon or something. And
did you intentionally do this metaphor so that the river landed into the Kerry Lake versus the Doug Mastriano?
Yes.
That worked
I did.
for me. That worked for me.
My brain works on multiple levels.
So the question I think going to this is, the metaphor is like, is it Stone that is at the core of this, right? Or to the extent, how close is Trump to it? And we don't want to beat the metaphor to the death, right? But for a long time now, and this is the same exact thing that happened in the Mueller investigation with Russia, right? It's this notion that Trump is too stupid to have plotted this. Like, Trump isn't actually doing this, right? Like, he is hoping it happens and rooting for it, right? He's rooting for Russia to attack Hillary. He's rooting for these people who are charging the Capitol, but he's not really plotting it. He's not really doing it, right? This is I don't know where this is along our river, somewhere between Lake and Youngkin's argument for what's happening. But it's the same guy in both situations. It was Roger Stone that's talking to Assange. It's Roger Stone that's plotting with the people that were the active participants in the insurrection, that were spurring on, the great and good Americans, the fine people who just showed up that day to cheer on the president and ended up finding themselves in the Capitol. Like the people that were actively plotting, it was Stone with them. And like, are we sure that Trump and Stone aren't talking ever? Right? This is where this
No,
is
we're
the
not sure at all. Of course
I'm
they're
sure
talking.
they
this is
are
so
talking.
Sure
this
they
is
are
where the
talking.
January
Yeah.
6th committee stuff like remains still relevant, right? And I think where the investigative portion of the January 6th committee, whenever they come back in, like that element matters, right? The extent to which Trump is not just talking with Meadows, not just throwing a temper tantrum, not just having a speech, not just pressuring the Secretary of State. I mean, he's guilty across the board on all that, but like how much he's actually also talking to the violent rioters.
Well, but this is how racketeering works, right? I mean, skinny Joey Merlino at the top of the organization does not
Is that
know
a real
every
person?
single
Or did you just make
shake.
that up on the fly?
That's a real person from the Philly mob
Hmm.
stories. He does not know every single business that Mikey Knuckles is shaking down on a daily basis,
Is Mikey Knuckles a
because he
real
just
person?
knows that Mikey Knuckles is doing Mikey Knuckles is doing what he's got to do, and doing his job. And this is so there are things which I'm sure Trump knew, things which Trump wanted to instigate, things which he wanted to have plausible deniability about. You saw this in the Maggie Haberman clip, right? Maggie Haberman had an excerpt from her book on in the Atlantic this weekend. And like there was a moment in it where Trump is talking about Sidney Powell and Sidney Powell's defense against the Dominion lawsuits, being that she shouldn't have been taken seriously, and he thought that was weak. And he had like the legal primer ready for that. And, I forget the exact phrase, but there's a legal term of art. Where he said, all you have to say is that to the best of my knowledge and understanding, that these things were true.
He understands how difficult it is to prove intent, and that proving
Yeah.
intent requires like proof of forethought or like an understanding of what you're doing. And he seemed to have that particular legal loophole, or not legal. It's not a loophole, but it's like he understood how you get around that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. All right. So we'll get the final January 6th hearing at some
Before we move on
point.
to the next category, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but I've just received something in my Slack that I think that it's worth discussing, which is the new next level imagery.
I
And
also received that in my
and
Slack. We look a bit.
We just talked about that.
I know,
We just talked about
but
that
I hadn't
moments
actually
ago.
seen it yet. Okay, and now I'm looking at JVL, and I think that if you said to an average viewer that there are two gay people on this picture and only one heterosexual, I don't know how many people would not choose you. I mean, you have a very kind of effeminate magician vibe on the new
I feel
artwork.
like I'm Gob Bluth
Gob
in
Bluth,
this.
you do.
I'm
I guess
about
Gob
to
is straight, but you
put the final countdown
yeah,
on, and I'm
you,
getting no. Gob is not straight. That's
is
the great joke of that.
is Gob Blue?
Gob goes blue for Ben Stiller's character in the fourth and fifth, the Netflix seasons of Arrested Development. Gob and Ben Stiller's Tony Wonder become a couple.
Oh, really? I never made it to
I think
season 5. That you kind of do. It is a Gob. This is gay Gob. This is right. I think that's the vibe you're giving off.
It's great. I'm about to do the Sword of Destiny routine. All right, let's move on.
Hold on. You guys are missing the main point of this artwork, which is that we all look like corpses. Like we just forget gay.
There
We
needs to
all
be some
look
color
dead.
adjustment.
Can
There
we
needs to
tan
be some
me a
color
little bit?
adjustment.
I'd like to get tanner.
Yeah.
It's been a long
That's
few years, though. So I get it. I get the vibe that they're trying to send, which is these people have been beaten down by the Trump years, and they're here to report.
We're going
from
to
the
try to
grave.
go to another level above where they are now. All right. So listen, I want to talk midterms. I want to talk about both Ohio and Pennsylvania because there are two interesting things happening in Ohio. So we talked, I think it was last week, about the Kemp Warnock voters, right? It was on our Not Quite Yet Out from Behind the Paywall show. How there were a whole bunch of people in Georgia who were going to vote for Brian Kemp for governor, and then we're going to vote for Raphael Warnock for senator. There's a lot more people like that in Ohio, where Mike DeWine is up by 23 points. He's at 55%. And Tim Ryan is at 46%, leading JD Vance by 3 points. Which means that even if you don't believe the polls, even if you believe that the Ryan Vance race is closer than it looks, or that Vance is ahead a little bit, it means that they're like I tried doing the math, like 1 in 10 DeWine voters is voting for Tim Ryan. That's nuts. People
Well,
in Ohio don't like JD Vance.
yeah, it's not nuts when you think that Sherrod Brown won in 2018 by 6 points. Like Trump won in 2020 by 8, Sherrod Brown won in 18 by 6, which means that, and I've said this about Ohio, and if you listen to the focus group episode we did in Ohio, we talked to a bunch of Trump 2020 voters and Sherrod Brown 18 voters, and they were mostly going for Ryan. And the reason was, and actually it was pretty interesting. One of the main things was they did not like Vance. They did not trust Vance. But also Ryan had been on the airwaves mostly unopposed over the summer, and he'd landed a couple of doozies. And one of them, so first of all, he's running an excellent campaign.
Really good.
Just a tremendous door knocking, I'm your neighbor, like
He's a good
I'm
candidate
from
too.
here.
He's a
And just
good
focusing on the
candidate running a
ads,
great
and a
campaign.
shamelessly good kind of the stuff you have to do that we're always asking Democrats to do. Like he was running ads that had Tucker Carlson praising him, right? There are a lot of
Yeah.
Democratic staffers who like, ooh, they get a little, that makes them feel a little uncomfortable, a little queasy. They won't go there. Like he's going there. He's doing what it takes.
He's touting that he voted with Trump on trade. He says he'll vote with whichever political party isn't going to outsource their jobs, the jobs of his friends and neighbors. He's got a great one where he's walking through his neighborhood and he's saying like, I would not I think about these people every single time I vote. Like it's really good. But one of the ads that everybody remembered and talked about in this group was that he was nailing Vance on the fact that he had a scam opioid charity. So he had this charity where he was supposedly collecting money to give to opioid, recovery services, and $0. Like for some reason, it did some polls. This group, and I didn't really know about this, but the women were talking about it in the group and about how they went and ran it down and looked it up, and they were like, "And it's true, and it's terrible." And that, yeah. So I would say he has done a good job of driving up Vance's negatives over the summer in a way where, look, I still think Republicans come home. I think overall, generally, I have a theory of Republicans coming home at the end. But I don't know. This is one of the craziest races where I think he does have a puncher's chance. And in part just because, campaigns matter and candidates matter.
Yeah, and I do think in Ohio, so the one polling caution before I kind of get into the good news is like the types of voters that these polls have seemed to be missing are, the sort of most stereotypical Trump in the diner New York Times voter, right? Like the downscale white working class types that probably don't like to whine that much, even because he got cucked a little bit on COVID, and just don't trust anybody, certainly somebody from some other state calling them on the phone to tell them what they really think. And so that, and if you look at where the polls have missed over the past couple cycles, it has been mostly these kind of white working class in the upper Midwest, but even kind of in Maine with Collins, and you've seen this in places like that more than in other places. So it's probably not right in the sense that Vance is probably leading Ryan. That's closer, but to your point, even if you unskew the polls a little bit, like the gap is pretty significant. And to me, the telling thing is that you would, if the MAGA nationalist theory of the case was true, right? That this sort of, that there's this big appetite for Vance, Hawley, Masters, nationalism that like doesn't have Trump's like skill at the trolling stuff, but is more, the types of nerds who sit in conference rooms at Claremont and try to put some ideology around Trumpism and some sheen of seriousness around nationalist populism, and are putting forth these candidates funded by Peter Thiel. You would think that there would be some voters that would cut the other way, right? That group could be able to reach into some of your Reagan Democrat types who maybe don't like DeWine, right? And there's not like any evidence of the fact that that is happening. Masters is running way behind where Lake is, for example. Vance running way behind. So the encouraging thing for me about this is even if Vance squeaks out a victory, it is not exactly a bullish sign for the scariest vertical inside our politics, which is this new right.
Let me twist the knife a little bit
Okay,
here.
great.
I think if Josh Mandel had been the nominee, he'd be 5 points ahead of wherever Vance is right now.
Right.
The Republican institutions, which went to the mattresses to try to muscle JD Vance through. The truth is, he's such a bad candidate and such a mope that and his campaign has been horrendous. I mean, he's barely there. He's like gallivanting around Europe and going on
People can
pilgrimages.
smell it too. He's got the little beard, and he's
going to win by 3.
He feels
but
like the beardy dude that walked into the VC firm in California and wanted to be a fake Midwestern Svengali. Like he feels like what he is, right? Which is not a real advocate for working class industrial Ohioans, right? People can smell that shit, and Mandel is kind of phony, but it wasn't phony in a more typical.
It was a try-hard.
Yeah, it was in a more typical
try-hard
Republican way.
Yeah.
Well, the way Lake is, right? Lake is also a phony, but she's like Mandel phony. Where they're really committed to it, right? And
super Will Ferrell level of commitment.
That's right. And so if you go back and if you really dig them up,
I'm sorry, hold on. Sacha Baron Cohen levels of commitment. They are living the character, right? Joaquin Phoenix levels. They're going on Letterman in character. That's
they to the point where they believe it now themselves to some degree. Where JD Vance and all these other soft boys that are running as the sort of nationalist populist types, it's funny because these are different shades of something that are not the same. So on one hand, right, what works is when you run as sort of the multi-ethnic, multiracial working class coalition, right? And this is something that I think Marco Rubio has sort of at least understood, okay, this is what we're going for. And sometimes we're going to side with the unions against big corporations because the corporations are woke, and that's different from independent businesses, which we still support. That's different from sort of the nationalist populist thing that Masters and Hawley and those guys are doing, where it's a war on big tech but it's all very performative, and it's all kind of from Yale, and people that doesn't connect with the working class ethos. They hear it, they're yeah, you're right about the woke stuff, and I don't agree with that, but it doesn't hit people the same way. And it's why it's hard for Vance, is because Ryan does have that multi-ethnic, multiracial working class ability to connect, and that's why he's kind of eaten into their the Trump margins. Trump was able to connect with that multiracial working class thing, not because he was exactly like that, but even though he was very rich, but he still and had soft hands, but he was still somebody that they saw as kind of like them because he was very accessible in the way that he talked, and
tabloidy,
he was very
WWE,
famous.
and he was very famous, right?
He was very
but
famous.
JD is more of the to put a finer point of it, it's like the severely conservative Mitt Romney moment at CPAC, but he's I'm severely populist. It's you can just sense that he whiffs on it when he's I to be honest with you, Steve, I don't care what happens with the Ukrainians. I don't give a fuck what happens with the Ukrainians. Now, the people who are listening to that are kind of I don't know. I was with you on the fact that we shouldn't be fighting wars over there on behalf of the globalists, but I don't care about the Ukrainians is a little try hard, right? We do care about the Ukrainians. We don't like the Russians. We don't like the woke military, right? It's you're sort of trying to hit it, but you're trying a little too hard and veering off the edge, and people just can smell it.
It's not an accident that all of these big populist tough guys are like Curtis Yarvin, JD Vance, right? I mean, they're the most effete, whatever. Okay. Into Pennsylvania. So this is the other interesting piece of polling that I wanted to talk about. Charlie highlighted this in his outstanding newsletter, which is free every day with no ads in it or anything. Everybody should go to thebulwark.com and sign up for Charlie's newsletter. there is this huge likability gap in Pennsylvania. And the bigger one is between Doug Mastriano and Josh Shapiro. Mastriano's at about negative 24 net likability, Shapiro plus
Is that
12.
bad?
That's I think it's not great, Bob. And
It's about the same as yours, Tim. It's like right the
Negative
same.
24.
Yeah.
I've been creeping up. Okay, I've been creeping up.
And with Fetterman Oz also, sorry, at negative 24. And what's funny here is that Mastriano has spent $0 on television, and Oz has spent like an entire vitamin shop's worth of dollars on television. And what he's been able to do though is drive Fetterman down to only plus 3. But so here you have, in terms of likability, enormous high 20s to mid 30s advantages for the Democrats. But in the actual polling, advantages which are only like plus 5 to plus 9. Sarah, you know a lot about this stuff. Doesn't likability normally track a lot closer with how people wind up voting? Don't people
Now,
normally vote for like the person they like?
yeah,
And
and
like they then construct all their rationales after the fact?
I mean, I think that we're gonna feel that way because I mean, I think the answer is sort of yes, and I think both these guys. I mean, I would say I think they're gonna win. I think that the Fetterman Oz race is gonna be closer than people expect, but I still think Fetterman's gonna pull it out. But this is what I mean about people coming home. Like I think what's happening with Oz is people don't like him. And the other thing, and just one other just factor that happened is a bunch of the Republicans ran really sort of devastating primaries against each other. And so like in the Pennsylvania primary and in the Ohio primary, you had this, right, where they were just destroying each other. They spent millions of dollars of ads driving negatives up on each other in the Republican primaries, and the Democrats in these cases mostly
You're
just kind of
making an
walked in.
argument for Joe Biden to run for re-election, by the way.
That's not. I'm not. I'm not.
Primaries are not good for the party if you can avoid them. Anyway, go ahead, continue.
Well, it depends. It depends on whether you're trying to sort of like reinvigorate a new generation and have a big conversation. I just think there are times when you have the advantage of incumbency, that can be problematic. Whether or not that's true for Joe Biden is a different story. But it hurt these Republicans, and so that's part of the reason their favorabilities are so low. But also, like, people are going to come home. Republicans are going to like hold their nose and vote for Oz. A lot of them, and especially even these college-educated suburban ones that normally you see as being willing to vote for the Democrats against, like, in like a Blake Masters case or something, they might vote for Oz. It's the like white working class Trump voters that actually probably pull Fetterman over the edge.
Right.
You know who's one of these voters you're talking about, JVL? Seems like I don't want to speak for them.
Tell
I
me.
can't get in this person's head per se, but based
Tell
on an
me.
article I read this weekend, the great Selena Zito, the Washington
Oh.
Examiner, Pittsburgh Post Tribune. She's taken a lot of heat
Yeah,
for
you know
being
what?
a very Trumpy, maybe not personally, but her writing was very, sort of representing the Trump voter. Was early on this. Kind of seeing that this was happening in the Republican primary from Pennsylvania, seeing the type of voter they're, living in her community. And she wrote basically a brutal takedown on Mastriano, how unlikable he is.
Yeah, that's because she doesn't get any access from him.
Maybe.
This
Okay,
is
but isn't that telling?
no, not maybe. I'm just telling
But
you. I
isn't
know
that
Selena a little bit.
doesn't that
but
tell
this
you
is-
doesn't that tell you something though? I don't know. Does it? You don't think
It tells me that they think that they all think that he's going to lose, and so they think there's no price for crapping on him.
fair enough. But maybe. But I guess what I'm saying is, if are there not equivalent types of people out there that are looking at this and saying, I think Josh, like, I don't, I'm not saying that that Selena Zito, who she's going to vote for or whatever, but that if she's writing this article, it's like Josh Shapiro, actually kind of a likable guy, cares about Pennsylvania, going around and meeting folks. On the other hand, Doug Mastriano, really weird, kind of creepy, doesn't let any media be around him, don't really understand what is happening there. are there not then voters who sort of are getting that same impression, who are probably Trump supporting voters? Some of them might hold their nose and vote for Mastriano anyway, and some of them might just be like, I don't know, this guy is just too weird and creepy, and Josh Shapiro seems perfectly fine, right? And so I think what I'm trying to get at is that to some extent explains that gap too, where you have these people that they might not necessarily like Mastriano, but they're still partisan brainwormed, partisan pilled, and like they're not going to go vote for Josh Shapiro, like a Jewish Democrat.
Yeah, how could you?
Right.
How could you? All right, so let's move on. There's two things that our our buddy Sebastian pulled for us, and I found them so compelling that I wanted us to spend like a minute and a half on each
Great.
of them. The first is a clip from which we're not going to bother listening to of Kyrsten Sinema giving a talk at the McConnell Center at the behest of her good friend Mitch McConnell.
Did you know he
who
had a center? I didn't know
I
he had a
did.
center.
I just assumed, you spread that much money around your state for that long, eventually you get a center. And she, Mitch McConnell praised her to the moon, and she just loved him right back. And I want to talk to Sarah about this because, in theory, this is the kind of thing that you and I both really want. Correct?
I also would like to,
We
Sarah, before you say
want.
correct, I also would like to talk to Sarah about this because I'm interested in if she can get inside the mind of a queer politically minded woman because I don't understand what's
So,
happening in Kristen Sinema's mind. So I want to see Sarah's opinion
all
both
right.
from a
So I
strategic
am
and a psychological standpoint.
I am a sucker for this sort of thing. I love the idea of having our politics back between the 40-yard lines, where what we're fighting about are marginal tax rates and pork. And, is there waste and fraud in building this dam project or something? That's what I would like to spend my time worrying about. I would like to worry about like reforming higher education or immigration or stuff like that, and not worry about like democracy protection. And so one of the necessary preconditions for that is that we need to get to a point where the people who actually have to do the work of governing have working relationships with one another. And some people see this as the swamp. Some people say this is all just BS kabuki theater. I place value in this, and I'd like to see it. On the other hand, McConnell's introduction of Sinema, as he was just slathering her up, he was talking about how she stood in the face of I don't know what a turtle does, so I don't know, like a dog would
I don't know.
slather
I
you
didn't
up, but
like.
what is it
We
when a
don't need to
turtle's trying
repeat
to
it.
butter you up? What is it?
I'm
Point
cringing.
is, what he said was he was talking about how she bravely stood to protect the filibuster. And here's what McConnell said. He said, if you break the institution, here meaning the filibuster, you break the country. Now, again, great deal of wisdom in that. I actually halfway agree with it. Sometimes I agree more than others. Sometimes I agree less than others. This is the same guy who broke the Supreme Court nomination process by refusing to hold a vote on a nominee for a sitting president, and then 4 years later pushing through a nominee with no support to essentially fully rebalance the Supreme Court. He broke the country. He did that, Mitch McConnell, and now he's praising her for that. So Sarah, you also like this sort of stuff, yes? Am
Yes.
I putting why
Mhm.
you like that? A, in this specific thing, you like this sort of thing in general. Do you like this specific thing with McConnell and Sinema? B, what is she getting out of any of this? Is she just getting to own the libs? Like what? Because I sat there thinking to myself, does she win a single vote in Arizona by hanging out with Mitch McConnell? Because to the best of my knowledge, nobody in America likes Mitch McConnell. The MAGAs hate him. The libs hate him. The other, there are a few people in the Federal Society who really like Mitch McConnell because he's gotten them a bunch of justices seated. But that's it.
Sure. but he is an enormously powerful senator. Right. And so let's just back up for a second. And people who may be listening to this for the first time don't know that there's an ongoing dynamic here in which you guys argued for a long time that nothing could ever get done in the Senate, that, everything was going to be bad. Nobody was going to cooperate ever. And I said, that's not true. I kept saying I thought that there would be things that people would cooperate on that they could find 10 Republican votes for. And that has turned out to be true over and over and over again. And when JVL, you and I had this argument, okay, Tim, okay. So but JVL and I had this argument on the Secret Pod when she did that appearance with Cornyn. Remember, she appeared with Cornyn to talk about the filibuster. And it was a little bit similar, where it felt like she was the one being used as the political prop for the other side, right? And yet, I suspect that a lot of the backroom dealing, the shadow Senate or the shadow Congress, involves the fact that Manchin and Sinema have these good relationships with Republicans. And I understand that there is a real desire to want to attack them over them not abolishing the filibuster. I am somebody who, I am marginally for the filibuster. I'm up for some reforms, but I do not think we should scrap it. The reason that we have the Supreme Court that we do now is because we scrapped the filibuster for the court appointments, which was both sides ratcheting up the scrapping of the filibuster over time so they could blame each other tit for tat. I think that it's good to have people try to get to 10 votes and work together and have there be something remotely bipartisan about it. So what does she get out of it? I suspect she is at the center of a lot of deal brokering in the actual Senate, which is good.
Okay, what about the so I want to go back to the gay men are from Mars, lesbians are for Venus element of this. Like that, I don't. So that's it. She just wants to be in the center of the thing. I just don't understand. Like, what does she want to get out of the deals? Like the whole, and she
the deals.
But like
the
what?
Deals.
So she just likes doing deals. Like that's it. She just likes doing. Like at the
Well,
end of the
deals, you'd say the deals as though there's. I mean, if she sees them as substantively improving people's lives. So
I mean,
right.
her
So
thing
the big
for the Inflation Reduction Act was like the carried interest tax.
right, the carried interest. So
who wanted
look,
that? Her and like 8 hedge fund dudes.
I guess that part I don't know. Look, I don't know, and I don't think any of us know like what maybe it was a sop to some hedge fund people that she knows. Maybe it was a deal she brokered with the Republicans for their donors. I have no idea why she did it. But
4-dimensional chess, where
maybe
she made a demand for the Republicans that the Democrats would have to accommodate in order to help bring.
I'm just not going to engage in
Okay.
performative
I can see
Sinema
that.
bashing just because it's like
neither of us are doing that.
No, I'm not saying you. I'm not saying you guys are doing it. I'm saying Twitter does it. I'm not saying you guys are doing it. I'm saying like it in the world right now, right? It is like a very popular thing to just like like Kyrsten Sinema is inexplicable, and I hate her, and she should get primaried. And like,
well, can I just offer the substantive case for the fact that she's inexplicable and that she should get primaried? Is that she's inexplicable and she should get primaried? What I don't. If I am nobody follows this closer than me. Okay, nobody spends more time reading Twitter. I listen to lobbyist podcasts. Like I engage into this as closely as anyone. And I have no idea what it is that she wants. Like I don't like, I guess besides like you're saying, besides to be in the mix, to be the person doing the deals, but like John McCain when he was being mavericky had like a base of people like me, moderate squishy Republicans who like also thought that climate change was real and that we should be nicer to immigrants and that we shouldn't torture people, but that are conservative on other issues. Like when John McCain was being mavericky, that was him. He wasn't always perfect. Sometimes he was inscrutable. Sometimes he was, easily flattered or whatever, and would do some inside game stuff. It's not like he's perfect. I don't know, what is Kyrsten Sinema's ideology? Is she a center left liberal? Is she a far left liberal? Is she a populist liberal? Like, is she a corporate liberal? I guess she's a corporate liberal now. She's like, she just loves like big corporations and wants to like think that they can do get jobs? Like, does she just like Mitch McConnell's thing? I don't understand. It's inscrutable. Joe Manchin it was with her on all this stuff, and it's very understandable why Joe Manchin is pushing for what he is doing. He's pushing for, he doesn't want the coal industry in his state to get screwed. He wants to be a little more open to culture, the cultural right, the working class, because he lives in fucking West Virginia, where the entire state is MAGA Republicans. Like, I understand exactly why he's doing and what he's doing. I don't understand what she's doing. I should be her base, right? I'm a moderate centrist. Like, throw me a thing. Be like, hey, the libs have gone overboard on this student loan thing or something. Here are a few substantive things where the left has gone overboard, and I want to. Like, that's not what she's done. She's just like being weird.
She is pretty weird. I mean, here's the thing. Look, she doesn't talk to anybody. And so when I say inscrutable, she is genuinely inscrutable. Like, nobody knows what it is that she's doing. But I think that, look, I think there's like a charitable case you could make where she's watching politics break down. She's watching people hate each other. And she's decided that one of the things she's going to do is lean into demonstrating that you can have these kinds of relationships. And I do think, like, she is still voting for all of Biden's stuff. She is like, she had this one weird thing where she dug in over the carried interest on that. And I couldn't even tell at that point if, like, she just wanted her pound of flesh because she'd done a lot of work on. I mean, Manchin got a bunch of stuff too. The whole thing got reduced. I don't know, but like, she votes for all the judges. Like, she votes for most of the Biden, agenda. And so maybe she likes being liked by her colleagues, and
Is she liked by her Democratic colleagues?
I have no idea.
I don't get that sense. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. I don't know. I mean, I look at this and I would say, for any person who has ever been in the United States Senate, if they're ever doing something that doesn't make sense, the Occam's razor explanation is because they want to run for president someday. And so I just assume that one of the things about Sinema is maybe she wants to run for president someday. Maybe that's not the case. I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know.
Occam's razor isn't always right.
I think one of the reasons that people find her so perplexing is because she was like a green
Member of the Green
progressive.
Party.
And so, like, she's had a long journey. That being said, a lot of our members of Congress over the last decade have had these, like, weird journeys where if you go back 10 years, they are nowhere like, you can't even connect them to the person that they are today. Like, she wouldn't even be the longest journey.
Well,
I don't know. Maybe she got there and said, like, I don't know. I've looked around this institution. What I think it needs more than anything else is, like, us to have conversations with each other and prove that we can be decent to each other.
I just think it's a weird place to be in the Democrats when you're getting flanked on the left by Bill Kristol. You know, it's like, it just might be a moment. It just might be a moment to be like, what's happening right now? Anyway, okay, fair enough.
all right.
No,
Listen,
but
we had some
Tim,
other.
do you think you should get rid of the filibuster? Do you think we should get? I don't.
No,
JBL and I've talked about this.
I don't think that we should get rid of the. I think that it's really stupid that Democrats want to get rid of the filibuster. Actually, and
Okay,
I
but
think
that's her main thing. That's the main thing she's stood up on.
Yeah, okay. So I guess we agree on that, but it's sort of like the manner in which she makes that argument is very odd, I think. And again, to JBL's point, it's like, oh, I need to respect the institution, and so now I'm here with Mitch McConnell and the people that stormed the
The
Capitol.
great respecter of
and
institutions.
like, all of my criticism is about the left, you know. And I it's okay. It's just like, why is every time I see her talking, is she criticizing the left only? Like, after we've had a storming of the Capitol, I find that to be strange. I agree with her on the filibuster. If I was her and I was a liberal, which she may not be anymore, I don't know, who wanted to protect the filibuster, the argument that I would be making is, I'm deeply scared that President Ron DeSantis in 2024 is going to ban abortion at 1 week federally. And she has said that has been one of her points, but it doesn't seem like her main point, right? And so, like, that is what I think that the left could really use somebody out there making that argument, which is, like, aren't you guys concerned about this? Aren't you guys, like, worried that getting rid of the filibuster could have some very extreme consequences? Like, look at the laws that are being passed in some of these red states around trans issues, around, you know, all these other social issues. Like, doesn't that worry you? Maybe we should have a check on this. I think that's a compelling argument, and one that she does make from time to time. But seems to be subliminal to her argument about like palling around with Mitch.
Yeah. And again, I have no idea what goes on in Kyrsten Sinema heads, and the fact that she's although did you see, I guess she used to date Keith Olbermann.
Yeah.
He threw that on
Yeah.
Twitter.
Very.
That was a
Yeah.
weird little thing to find out. So like, I mean, who
Isn't he
dates
like 30 years older than she is?
Yeah, so like who dates Keith Olbermann and is a green, queer, like communist type in tutus who then becomes a senator and hangs out with Mitch
Damn it.
McConnell? Like, I don't know. Yeah,
Bisexuals. They just can't make up their mind.
That's true. Can't make up. But so like I have no idea why she is the way she is. All I know is that there are 50-ish other senators that I more than that, because I would put some of like the Mazie Hirono's like the really like way before her. Like sometimes I find the obsession with Sinema and even the hatred for like a Susan like I agree obviously with what you said, that like basically I think everybody should focus on the people who did the coup. That's really important. That being said, I am sympathetic to being a legislator in a swing state who is who is looking around saying like, boy, politics is really toxic. Like and who decides, like maybe it wouldn't be our decision, but who decides that the best thing she can do in her role, maybe because she's a people person or she's an institutionalist, I don't know, she's like, I can be friends with these guys and I can try to bring the temperature down. Nobody likes it. I'll stipulate that nobody is a fan of this thing. That's my charitable case for Kyrsten Sinema.
Someone had to make it.
Someone had to make it.
Well, I mean, look, Joe Biden's been bringing the temperature down. God love him. Nobody gives him credit for that either. All right. Sorry, I had to stand for Biden here. Listen, we had a bunch of other stuff we were going to talk about, but the show is already running long.
It's always running long.
I don't want to cheat. Well, we're not there yet, but we're going to be long. I will have to cheat people out of furry talk. And so I am going to fast forward us right to that. Sarah, you just did a focus group about furries. I'm Ron Burgundy.
No, JVL. Of course, that's not what happened.
Okay.
But this was funny, although Twitter is making me so mad. Because nothing's funny anymore. This is what I mean. Maybe Kyrsten Sinema just got like so fed up with everybody and has just like decided to just one epic troll after
cancel
another.
Culture run amok.
So I'm doing this focus group with Wisconsin swing voters, and it's a terrific group. They are thoughtful. They voted for Trump in 2016. All the reasons I always say. Hated Hillary Clinton. He was a businessman. Maybe do something different. Saw him over the 4 years and we're like, absolutely not again in 2020. And we're very much sticking with it. But they all voted in the Republican primary, which was pretty interesting. And most of them had voted for Governor for Cleefish, who was the slightly more establishment.
I'm sorry, just for clarity, the Republican primary in 2022 in the Senate and Governor.
In 2022, in this last round, they voted in the Republican primary. And so that's how they're thinking about themselves, right? Like they were Republicans, they voted for Trump, then they voted for Biden, but they're still voting in Republican primaries, and they all tried to basically vote for like the more normal of the two Republicans. They hate Ron Johnson. And so but just out of nowhere, so they're just talking and I'm just listening. It was done the other night and I was just catching up. I couldn't watch it live. And so I was watching the recording and I was listening. And all of a sudden, this woman, she's like, she's talking about just how the country is falling apart. And she just says, and I'm a teacher and I was at the school the other day for this event. And there were like 12 or 15 kids who were dressed as furries. And like, there's sort of this like record scratch in the group. And like, some people are like, what do you mean furries? And this group is just like all like middle-aged people.
Lutheran, Wisconsinites, mild-mannered, not a lot of cursing.
Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm gonna require you to do the entire rest of this story in the Wisconsin accent.
I can't do it. And she's true. And she's like, but her point was like, this is the problem with Trump, is that once you just like, anybody can say whatever they want, anybody can do whatever they want, bing, bang, boom, you got kids acting like furries. But so then some of the people in the group are like, what's a furry? And the moderator too is like, is that when you dress up as a stuffed animal? Which I thought was like, So first of all, also my understanding of furries is pretty limited. I just think it's always been like a funny thing, something people say about Beto, like Beto's a furry. I don't know. So this woman says like, yes, I had to explain this to my 90-year-old mother recently. She's like, I told her that this monkeypox thing is real, and I told her that about furries, and so then she defines it for the group.
She was trying to kill her 90-year-old mother.
She defines it. She said her mother had a tough time, coming to grips with this. But she said that furries is when you identify as like a dog or a cat, which I was pretty sure wasn't
That's
right.
not
Incorrect.
That's not it.
Incorrect.
And so people so this, but the group is really funny because the group is reacting two ways. There are like old men being like, they identify as cats and dogs. Like one old guy is saying that, very nice guy. And they're just shaking their heads like, this is the world has gone crazy. And then there's other people that are sort of like, so there's like the people that are like disbelief, but like whatever. And then there's the other part of the group that's like, yeah, this is a real thing. I know about this. I've heard about this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just I was laughing. I was crying with laughter, but then I tweeted about it.
Wait, before we get to the Twitter drama, there was not a single member, including the moderator. Did the moderator just not want to be Candy Crowley? There was not a single member of the group who correctly defined the furry. Which is
I don't think so. I don't think anybody had like a quite a. But there was like
it's a sexual thing. It's not a gender identity thing, right?
That's right.
It's like you get off on fucking mascots.
Yeah, right. Thank you, JB.
Right. Yeah. So I think.
I'm sorry. Right? Is that wrong?
Thank you for summing it up. I was going to give a much more deliberative explanation than that, for some of our listeners to work them in. But no, you get off on fucking mascots is exactly right. Yeah.
Oh, Sebastian put it in the comments.
Yeah, his definition is also a little softer. JVL really got the essence of it.
An enthusiast for animal characters with human characteristics, in particular, a person who dresses up in a costume as such a character and uses one as an avatar online. Oh, that is also softer because
then they meet in public. They're meetings or furry meetups, and you'll have like a Care Bear and whatever Woody the Woodpecker, and they get together, and
and the Philly Fanatic with that tongue of
flirting happening, and I've never really quite understood.
I get nothing for the Philly Fanatic.
I was letting it go. I've never really quite understood like the particulars of the orgasm and how that goes down, because I think there's some challenges for the males in particular. I think there's some challenges there that I never really understood, but besides that, I'm pretty well versed. I just the end game, I don't know the details on. Sebastian does, but he said he was going to share it offline. So
okay, so I just because I think I saw a documentary or something like on MTV when we were like all in our early 20s or something. This was a thing, and that's like the last time I ever like clocked this phenomenon. And of course, at the time, it was just like, all right, like this is goofy, but whatever. This isn't like a real thing. Like it's not like a lot of people do this, and if they do, and people want to get dressed up as animals and like I don't know, hang out, like whatever. It just like seems like relatively harmless compared to many other things one could be doing.
I mean, why don't they dress up as Confederate soldiers and go out and do militia work? That would be wholesome. It's terrible that they're dressing up as Elmo to bang it out for the other. They should be out marching with armbands and AKs and
tri-cornered hats,
AR-15s. That's
real
America.
But that's not why this is funny. This is funny because while they're having furry panic on this thing, right? And she's explaining it wrong. And so like the people in the group, so it's like, it's about identifying as cats and dogs, which I think is a newer phenomenon that, as Tim points out, is related to what is sort of the panic over the current gender identity that's going on, right? So it's sort of like queer.
It's not a new phenomenon. It's like a series of Facebook memes that old people are reading and thinking are true.
So, I mean, I'm sure that there were like kids at this school who like had, I don't know, like cat's ears on or like.
Yeah.
Or
that's a thing they make for girls now. They have headbands with little cat's ears on. It doesn't mean that these kids are walking around saying, I demand that you address me as Miss Peebles or
Yeah,
something.
or they were in like footy pajamas, being like teenagers. Like, this is the thing. This is where moral panic meets like kids being
Gullible
weird.
old people.
Well, like kids being weirdos just to do it because they're teenagers. Like they put on trench coats. They were goths. They were
Can
whatever.
we get this woman on though? Like, I have some follow-up questions. Like, what are the pronouns for the cat kids? Like, were they demanding to be called like, kitty? Kid?
She clearly had just like seen it. Like, this was but then somebody else did chime in.
I
with
don't
this
think she
other
did.
thing.
I bet you anything she didn't see it. I bet
No,
you
she
she
saw
read
it.
something on Facebook.
No. She had a very clear story. I'm not gonna, because I don't want to like
Out
put a
her.
place around it, right? But she had a very clear story about a place she was and a thing that she witnessed.
they were-
So
She
I'm
was in
not gonna.
Crucial Waukesha
They were
County.
dressed up in costume
and-
though.
This
It was
is-
costumes. They were in
this person-
costumes.
This person is totally normal. She is not. You do not need to disparage her. She's telling you a thing that she saw. She's just somebody who gets caught up, right, in this, like, because there is this sort of panic about gender identity right now, and there's all these things, and like kids are identifying as strawberries and like everything, because like kids are just being weird. People use that as a way to be like, boy, whole country is falling apart. And I'm like, guys, teenagers have always been weird, and like older people have always been mystified by young people. Like, that's all
This
that's
is
happening
literally
here.
the Satanism panic with the
This
goths.
is not
Do you
the
remember
end of
that?
society. But I thought it was just funny. Like, I just thought it was like pure joy, funny.
And the people on Twitter shared in your mirth?
No, everybody like immediately
what happened?
decamped into like, oh, and that's Biden's fault. And I was like, no. Like, actually, she was blaming Trump, but like, it's neither of their faults that like for generations, kids have been weird and adults have been mystified by their like practices. This is just
Then
funny.
there was the
Like,
other
why can't any just
category
think that's...
of Twitter complaint.
Oh, and then but then there's the other category who's like, see, this is how like gender queer theory is destroying America. I'm like, guys, none of this is everybody settle down. This is
Did
not
you
all
have
the thing.
anybody from the left chastising you for not taking the furries' concerns seriously?
Well, I did. There were people in there, yeah, being like, I've met furries and they're very nice people, and I'm like,
I'm sure.
okay, well, this isn't. I'm not disparaging
I love
furries.
furries.
I'm not disparaging that. This is just funny, guys. And why can't it was meant to be a timeline cleanser, and instead everybody takes everything so seriously, and everyone
You
should
can't
stop
have
it.
timeline cleansers these days, Sarah. Okay, please just focus on the enemy. All right, tweeting about the enemy and why they are always bad. That's the only thing
bad people.
that's acceptable.
All right. Good show. Long show. Very long show. First show out from behind the paywall.
I had a
It was
lot of
something
good
else.
material. I had good material
Yeah,
about
well, you're gonna
Glenn
have to save that for
Youngkin
the
and the
next week.
student
We do this
walkout.
every week.
I had good
We do
material on
this
Gavin
every
Newsom and how
week,
creepy
people.
he was.
Oh,
I
we
had
didn't get to Gavin
I had-
Newsom. Why don't we cut the January 6th thing and talk about Gavin Newsom?
Because we're at an hour already, and we're not gonna do that, Sarah. We'll do Gavin Newsom next week. Gavin Newsom isn't going away. He's so thirsty. He's gonna be there, being thirsty in our faces until Joe Biden, actually declares that he's running for
and
re-election.
even after.
Yeah. So, all right, everybody who's just joining us for the first time, thanks so much. Go ahead and subscribe. Mash that subscribe button.
Tell
And
your
also
pals.
go over to the Bulwark. Tell your pals. Go to thebulwark.com. Follow Tim on Twitter. Follow Sarah on Twitter. Sign up for Charlie's newsletters at thebulwark.com. Read all of our great stuff. Listen to the podcasts. Follow the videos. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Peace.